All right, today we're gonna go over the GoPro Hero 9 Black setup and settings guide. A ton of you have picked up this camera and hit me up asking me if any of my settings have changed now that I'm using the Hero 9. And yes, a few of them have. A lot of them are the same still, but a few of them have changed as I've started to trust the camera more and let it do more. Before we jump into that though, Morgan just released 2 new songs. One, an original song on their Morgan Lee Band, Spotify channel and iTunes, and wherever you get music. And then today, she just released another song where she collaborated with a guy, Abandoning Sunday, his name is, and I'll link that here and down below. Both of those songs will be down below. Go check them out. They're kind of amazing and I love it. I love her and I love her music. She's real good. Okay, onto the setup and settings, and I'm gonna put the chapter markers below so I can break this up a little bit. We're basically gonna go through kind of the setup, the physical setup of the camera, into the preferences, then we'll jump into all those preset video modes, and then lastly, I'll touch on a time lapse and a photo mode that I use a lot. In general, I don't use the GoPro a ton for photography specifically. I mainly use it for video, and then there's a couple of photo setups that I use. So I'm gonna go through those, but if you want like a full video all about photography with the GoPro, comment below, let me know if that's something you guys want to see. I will show you how to get the best pictures out of a GoPro. Again, even though I don't use it a ton as a camera, as a photography camera. I use it as a video camera all the time. All right, the very first thing that I'm gonna jump into is the physical changes that I do to the GoPro. They're not a ton, but the main thing that I do, the very first thing, and unfortunately they're still on pre-order right now, but they should be coming out in about a week, is screen protectors. You have to put screen protectors on your GoPro. It's an action camera. The whole point of this camera is to take it out there and kind of abuse it. And the screen protector kit that I went with, it gives you a rear screen protector, it gives you a front screen protector, really awesome, and then it also gives you a protector for the lens. Now, on the Hero 8, I did use the protective cover for the lens because on the Hero 8, this wasn't replaceable, but on the Hero 9, it's on there pretty good. This here is the lens cover. That's the actual lens under there. This is the lens protector. So I don't need another protector to protect my protector. I'm gonna buy a few extra of these so that if anything happens to this, if anything, it's all good. If anything happens to this, I just pull another one of these out of my backpack, I pop it on my GoPro, and boom, I am ready to go. I'll link the screen protector kit below, but again, it comes with 6 pieces. So it comes with 2 rear screen protectors, 2 front screen protectors, and 2 lens protectors. The only thing I won't be using is the lens protectors. And it's definitely awesome that it gives you 2 of each of these because sometimes they'll crack, like the edge will crack, it'll hit something and it'll crack just on the edge, and you know, it's okay at first, but after a while it starts catching on things and yeah, then you replace it. Again, I'll link that below for you guys. And the second thing that I do to my GoPros, because it's awesome, is if you can see in there, I put a little silver dot on my battery. It's actually on the GoPro also, but I put that on my battery because the battery, if it goes in this way, it doesn't go in all the way. And if it goes in this way, that's the right way to do it. So I put a silver mark on the battery and I put a silver mark on the GoPro. So as soon as I'm putting it in visually, I just see where it goes. And I do the same thing on the dual charger. So on the dual charger, I put a silver Sharpie mark on both sides, and then I put the silver Sharpie mark on the battery. So when I'm putting them in the charger, I know which way it goes. The dual charger for the 9 isn't out yet, but when I do get it, it's on pre-order, I'll silver Sharpie that also. Again, it's just to give me a visual cue of where that battery's going. So if I'm just grabbing a battery quickly, I can look at it, go bink, and I know it goes in the right way. It's like USB-A cords that have to be one certain way, like you put it in the wrong way and you go, ugh, then you have to flip it over. I do that on all my USB-A cords too. I put a silver dot on the top, so when I'm putting them on my computer, I never do it wrong. Buy yourself a pack of silver Sharpies. Pro tip. All right, now we're actually gonna jump into the camera. I'm gonna swipe down from the top to the preferences, and right away there's all those quick preferences. And just to run through these really quickly, the first one is voice control. I actually don't use voice control on the GoPro very often at all, so I almost always have that turned off. I don't wanna accidentally start something or accidentally stop a recording because the voice control was triggered. Especially for instance, if I'm around a lot of other people using a GoPro and they say something like, GoPro, stop video, and then my video stops, I would be upset. And while it's a super cool feature, I really like that it's on there. There are times when I click that on, but for the most part, I have that off. The second one in there is beeps, and I turn all those off. I don't want my camera beeping when I'm starting it. I don't want it to beep when I start a recording, and I don't want it to beep when I stop a recording. Mainly, I don't know, it just gets annoying and I don't need it. I think I'm so used to bigger cameras like this where when I hit record, it doesn't go boop, 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 and then when I stop it, boop, 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 boop. So I'm just used to that. So when it does beep at me, I'm like, feels aggressive. The next one over from that is quick capture, and I do have that turned on. I really like this feature. Basically what it means is that when my GoPro is completely powered off and I just have it in my pocket or something, I can just pull it out, hit the record button, and it's gonna kick on and start recording in the default video mode that I've chosen. And then when I'm done recording whatever I'm recording, I just hit that record button again, it stops the recording, and then it turns the GoPro back off. I can throw it back in my bag. A super clever feature and really, really useful. All right, next over from there is the lock screen. It's when you actually lock the screen. The main reason to use this is water. If you're gonna go into the water, if you're gonna go underwater, sometimes just being in the water actually somehow causes button presses, or it'll switch modes. Like, things will happen to the touch screen because you're in water. So the idea is you wanna, above water, you wanna get the camera set just how you want it, hit screen lock, then go under, and now the record button on top and the side mode button are the only two buttons that work. The touch screen is then locked. And then when you wanna get it unlocked, you have to do this whole thing where you touch it and then you hold screen lock. Really, really useful, but obviously I don't always have that on. Only when I'm diving underwater. Down to the bottom left is grid, and I do have the grid on. I love having the grid on. Basically all that does is it gives me my third lines on here. That looked like I was doing looked like I was doing a church cross when I did that. But yeah, these third lines, they just help you frame the shot. They just help you kind of see the scene, see it in thirds, how it is, and it's really good for composition. So I keep those turned on. The next one over is the front screen, and this is where you cycle through those front screen options. A lot of people ask if you can turn the front screen off, and this is where you do it. So you can go off, you can say you just want it to be status only, where it's just gonna show you the numbers. You can say actual screen, where it's gonna take that square screen and it's gonna crop in, it's gonna put a black bar on top and bottom, so you actually see the composition of your frame. Or you can say full screen, and it's gonna stretch that image all the way out. It's gonna cut off part of your image, but it'll be zoomed in a bit more. I personally like actual screen because, again, I'm using the front screen of my camera to compose my image and to make sure that the exposure is proper. So right there, actual screen. Over from that is orientation locked. I leave it on all, which means that I could film this way, hit record. I could turn my GoPro this way. All the controls are gonna switch for me. I can hit record. It's actually gonna film a vertical video. The other nice thing is if I have it on like an undersling mount, like I'm on something mounted and I hold the GoPro super low on the ground, I can hit record and it's gonna record that clip as an upright clip even though the GoPro is upside down. Now this only works if you flip it over and then you hit record. If you hold it up like this, you hit record and then you flip it over, now it'll be upside down. You'll have to fix that in post. But in here you can lock the orientation so it's locked upright, or it's locked upside down, or it's locked on its side. Totally up to you. And the last one there is the max lens mod button, and I don't have the max lens mod. GoPro, I would love the max lens mod. GoPro, if you want to send me a max lens mod, be awesome. I'd love to play with it. Be super cool. But I don't have one, so obviously I leave that turned off. All right, now we're gonna swipe to the next screen. This is where we dive into the preferences, click into preferences and into general. Beep volume is on high, even though I have my beeps off, so that doesn't matter. Quick capture is on. Default preset, this is important because default preset is what quick capture is using. So whatever you have set as your default preset is what quick capture will use. When you hit it, it'll default turn on, use that mode. You hit it again, it default turns off, it turns off. I have that for last used video. So whichever video mode I was in is the video mode that it will use for quick capture. Auto power off, I have mine set for 15 minutes. If after 15 minutes I haven't used my GoPro, I'd like it to turn off. That's nice. LEDs all on. This is a change from last time because usually I always kept my LEDs off, but I don't know, recently I've just had them on. It's been nice to look at the GoPro, see the red lights flashing in super bright sunlight. It's easier to see the red lights flashing than it is to see the screen and see that it's actually recording. So now I keep my LEDs on. And then if I want to be sneaky, I just hold my finger over the little LED on the front and people that I'm filming don't know that I'm filming them. That caused so much controversy last time I said that. Everything else is time, date, format, Yeah, all the same. Voice control I have turned off, and then into displays, the only thing I really change in here is screensaver rear I set to never, which means that while I'm recording a clip, my rear screen will never turn off. It won't go to sleep while I'm recording. So if I film a 30-minute clip, the screen stays on for all 30 minutes. And then screensaver front, I have to match the rear screen, so it never goes off either. And lastly, brightness at 100%. I realize that all three of these things significantly decrease my battery life, but that's why I buy extra batteries. I would rather have the best recording experience possible. I don't want it to be filming and all of a sudden my rear screen goes to sleep, and in the middle of a shot I have to tap the rear screen, the camera's going bump, 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 bump to wake it back up, so I just always have it on. And then I buy more batteries, and I keep like 10 batteries with me. Not 10, but like 3. Okay, and I think that's it for preferences. I think those are all the preferences that I go in, I change before I ever start filming. Next up, let's jump into my presets, the actual video presets that I use on the daily basis. On a daily basis? On a daily basis. All right, there are now 7 different presets that I have set up in here, and the first one is just called standard. This is my daily preset. This is just my daily go-to. I know I can hit the record button, film, it's gonna look pretty dang good. It's not overly cinematic or anything, but it's ready to rock. I could send it over to my phone, do a couple quick edits on my phone, and post it. And for that, I am in 5K at 24 frames a second. The lens is wide, hypersmooth is on, bitrate is high, shutter is on auto, so I'm not using an ND filter. This is the easy mode. EV comp is at -0.5. I found that the GoPro tends to want to favor a brighter image, and a lot of times the highlights get blown out. I would rather it shoot half a stop underexposed, and then I will boost that later rather than it shooting overexposed and trying to recover that. Because if a highlight gets blown out, it's just pure white, it's gone. But if a shadow's too dark, I can kind of pull it up. There's a little bit of data still in there. So when in doubt on GoPros, I almost always cheat half a stop underexposed. White balance is auto. Again, this is the easy mode. ISO min 100, ISO max 1600. I've been letting my GoPro go a little bit higher. I used to do 800, now I'm at 1600. Sharpness is on low, color is GoPro, and wind is auto. So color GoPro, that's what makes this ready to go. That's why this is the preset that I tell most people, throw this in there, get all these settings dialed in, go out and film. You could just chop it up, put it together, and this is gonna look pretty dang good. GoPro has done a ton to their new color science to make it look a little bit more natural, keep skin tones from going so orangey, even though they are still quite orange. It's less, it looks a little bit more natural, and I think GoPro color has come a long way. Okay, the next 2 presets are pretty much the exact same except for the resolution and frame rate. So the next one down, called travel, is 4K 60, and everything else is the same. Bitrate's on high, EV comp is -5, white balance auto, ISO min and max are the same, sharpness on low, color GoPro, all the same. And then the next one down from that is activity, which is 2.7K at 120 frames a second. Same thing, all those exact same settings from my first one are all the same through here. Bitrate high, shutter auto. All 3 of those are kind of my ready to go settings at those 3 different frame rates. So just with one touch of a button, I can jump from 5K 24 to 4K 60 to 2.7K 120. Then the next preset down from that is my POV preset at 4K 24 frames a second. Now the lens is super view instead of wide, hypersmooth on. Bitrate is high, shutter auto, EV comp -0.5, white balance auto, ISO min and max are the same, sharpness at low, color is GoPro, everything else is the same. And then down from that is the exact same thing, except now we've dropped to 2.7K at 60 frames a second in super view. So this is also a POV mode, and then all the other settings are the same. And then the next preset is where things get cinematic. This is where I'm gonna say, I want this to match as closely as I can to this camera. I'm gonna shoot with this, and I'm gonna shoot with that, and I'm gonna try to blend them together as well as I can. And this is our cinematic mode. And for those settings, we have got 5K 24 frames a second. The lens is set to linear with horizon leveling. That's gonna give me the most effective gimbal feel. So as I'm walking, as I'm doing anything turning shot to shot, it's gonna keep the horizon perfectly level. It's gonna use hypersmooth. It's in linear mode, so it's boosted in a little bit more. It looks a little bit more like this camera. And that hypersmooth plus horizon leveling really, it gives it the craziest gimbal effect. It's super impressive. Down from there, bitrate is high. The shutter is at 1/48 of a second. Now here is where that cinematic vibe comes in. I'm shooting in 24 frames a second, My shutter speed is 1/48 of a second. I'm following the 180 rule. If you don't know much about shutter speed or frame rates, click here. I'll send you over to another one of my videos where I explain all that stuff. But this is where things get a little bit more complicated with the GoPro, because if I'm in an outdoor light situation, I'm at 1/48 of a second, I now need ND filters. So it's great that, you know, this thing takes ND filters because the lens pops off. I can pop on an ND filter. I just don't have any ND filters for this yet. I think I'm gonna try to get my hands on the Polar Pro ND filters, but that's where you bring in ND filters. Down from there, the white balance is native. My ISO min is 100. My ISO max is 400. Because again, I don't want this shot moving too much. I don't want it to be super bright and then all of a sudden super dark and moving around at all. I wanna kind of hone it in, keep it the same exposure the whole shot. This is the cinematic setting, so this is the setting where I'm really trying to get as much control over my GoPro as possible. And then our sharpness is low and our color is flat. So this is the mode where we go to that flat color profile. I'm gonna do a lot of color grading in post on this one. This is, I'm trying to match a GoPro as closely as I can to this camera. It's not easy, it's never perfect, but with these settings, it gets pretty close, or at least close enough. You're still gonna know it's a GoPro when I switch from my $5,000 rig to a $400 rig. And I think that's the only other changes to cinematic. Now the next mode down, the very last one, and I kept it as the last one because I don't use it often enough, but it's 1080 at 240 frames a second, and all other settings are the same as those first three. So I use 24 frames a second a lot, I use 60 frames and 120 a lot. I rarely use 240 frames a second. It's just really, really slow. And that level of slow-mo it's great if something's moving really, really fast, but if it's not moving very fast for most people, most things that you're gonna be filming, 120 is about as slow as you wanna go. But if you are filming something super fast and then you wanna see it slowed down 10 times slow-mo, that's where you jump to 240. Again though, I use it rarely. I do have it set up in there as one of my presets. It's just the very last preset. Okay, and those are all of my video presets. So all the video presets, that's what they are. Set them up how you would like them. The cool thing too is that at any point I can go into any of these presets and do a quick change on them. So if I wanna go in here and just switch to flat color profile, because I'm like, I'm gonna take my 5K 24, all other settings the same, how I normally have them, I'm just gonna switch it to flat real quick. It's a quick one button press, I'm switched into flat mode. Or if I wanted to go into any of those, throw an ND filter on, have everything else fairly auto or fairly standard, but then I wanna keep my shutter speed at 1/48, I can do that too. All right, next up we're gonna swipe over to our time-lapse modes, and there's kind of only one time-lapse mode, actually two time-lapse modes that I use. The number one is time warp, and this is where we're driving down the road or we're moving through something and you get that kind of woo, 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 super fast sped up and oddly stabilized effect. It's really impressive how stabilized the time warp is. And I mainly use time warps to get us from A to B in a story. So if we're out doing something and we say, we're heading to the beach, it's awesome to include a quick couple of clips of a time warp of us getting to the beach. That's better than that whole like, we're going to the beach. And then you're at the beach when the hand pulls away from the beach. And my settings for time warp is resolution 4K, lens wide, speed 5 times. And the reason I do 5 times is that at 5 times is a good time warp speed. I can always take that clip in post and I can speed it up even more. You can't slow it down anymore, but I could speed it up even more. 5 times it's like my minimum time warp speed. And then in post, I can always speed it up. 2 times time warp doesn't seem like enough. Doesn't seem like enough motion or enough speed to actually create the effect. Down from there, I use the EV comp at -5, white balance auto, ISO min 100, ISO max 1600, sharpness low, and color GoPro. And that's it. That's how I do my time warps. And then pretty much the only other setting that I use on this camera a lot is time lapse. And the next one down is time lapse. And the reason I use time lapse is for doing 0.5 second interval shooting. So if I'm out surfing or something like that and I want to get a picture of me riding the wave, I'm gonna be sitting out there, I'm gonna have it in this mode, I'm gonna hit the button, the GoPro's gonna start taking a picture every half second, I'm gonna catch the wave and it's gonna go ping, 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 ping. I get off the wave, I stop it right away, it just shot like 40 photos of me surfing. And that's in here under time lapse. The lens is wide, the format is photo, the interval is 0.5 seconds, the output is standard. And basically what that means is that it's actually giving me JPEGs, it's not giving me RAWs. But the reason that I have it set for that is because if you switch to RAW mode, it can only do that every 5 seconds. So if you need anything faster than every 5 seconds, you have to switch to JPEGs to do that. A bummer, but it's a GoPro. All right, next up from there, the EV comp is at -0.5, white balance auto, ISO min 100, ISO max 1600, sharpness low, color GoPro. And that's mainly how I take photos with the GoPro. If I am just gonna take a single photo, I go over to photo mode, I tap in there, and that I use wide lens, raw output, and that's it. EV comp -0.5, shutter auto, sharpness low. That's it for photos. I rarely take photos on my GoPro. Again, it's just, I have my big camera with me usually, I have my iPhone with me usually, and even my iPhone or this, it's easier to whip my iPhone out and snap a shot than to flip into photo mode, take a shot, and then bring it over later and then process it. But again, if you guys want a whole video on tricks and tips for taking photos on your GoPro, let me know in the comments below and I will make an entire video teaching you how to get the best photos out of your GoPro that you possibly can. But in general, from a lot of these settings, you're kind of gonna see that if you've watched my last 2 settings videos on the 8 and the 7, I'm starting to trust the GoPro a lot more. I'm trusting that the GoPro is gonna get a decent enough shot, a close enough shot that I can pull that in and I can edit that later and it's gonna look pretty great, as opposed to before where I just went as manual as possible. That 5K cinematic setting, I pretty much used that, but in different frame rates and resolutions, and I really kept it as manual as possible. And now, the GoPro 9 is pretty clever. It's doing a great job in a lot of those kind of auto-y modes. I'll keep you updated on if that continues, if it keeps making me happy and serving me well in those modes. And if it doesn't, I'll also let you know that I've switched back to a more manual usage of the camera. And those are my exact Hero 9 Black settings. That's exactly how I have my camera set up. I hope this helped you guys. I hope that by seeing my settings, you can dial some of those in, make tweaks to suit your usage case. But yeah, I hope that helped you out. If it did help you out, hit the like button below. Maybe comment below, let me know if it did help out, and I'll see you guys soon. Hey, by the way, we're gonna go get little buddy. I'm gonna go get him.